It's Hyp3r Halloween.
I spoke about Gremlins last year, so I felt it fitting to talk about Gremlins 2 this year. Gremlins 2, the new batch, takes the series in a different direction from the first. Although it has a similar plot, that is, Gremlins take over an area, its tone is shifted from a darker tone to a more slapstick tone. Even though you probably could make the case that Gremlins 1 has its share of slapstick comedy in it as well, but Gremlins 2 takes it to new extremes. Instead of a quaint little town, Gremlins 2 takes place in New York City. The movie starts off in Chinatown, where we see the Chinese antique shop from the first movie. A group of individuals come in with an offer from a Mr. Clamp to purchase the building. Clamp needs to purchase this building so that he can develop new buildings on the block. The antique store owner refuses to sell, but dies shortly after. Now there's nothing standing in the way of Clamp Enterprises. Clamp purchases the building and tears it down. Gizmo is now left without a home, but he's immediately picked up by someone that, either ironically or for easiness, works in the Clamp Tower. Not only does this man work in Clamp Tower, but he also works in the genetic lab in Clamp Tower. And yes, as you watch, you'll see this building has tons of random stuff like this. Billy and Kate also work in Clamp Towers. Billy designs Clamp's architecture, while Kate is a tour guide that takes people on tour throughout the building. Billy soon discovers that Gizmo is inside the Clamp building and proceeds to rescue him. The plot progresses and Billy leaves Gizmo unattended. Gizmo is then hit with water from a nearby fountain, spawning more Mogwai, and we're off to the races. The initial evil Mogwai have a bit more personality than the ones in the first film. There's a clear alpha in Mohawk, there's one that's batshit crazy, and then there's the George and Lenny character archetypes, similar to that of Mice and Men. The Clamp Tower is home to many restaurants, so it doesn't take long for the bad Mogwai to become gremlins. The gremlin designs in this movie look phenomenal. They look similar, but there's just something about Mohawk that looks badass. Billy and Kate try to warn the people of Clamp Tower, but they don't listen until they're personally attacked. The gremlins begin to multiply and eventually overrun the genetics lab. There are several chemicals there that give the gremlins unique traits. We end up with a bat gremlin, an electric gremlin, a vegetable gremlin, a female gremlin, a spider gremlin, and a smart one that can talk. The smart gremlin, named Brain, soon takes over as the leader of the gremlins and plans to hit the town as soon as night falls. Billy, working with Mr. Clamp and a few others, devise a way to stop the gremlins. That ends up not working, so Billy comes up with a plan on the fly to get rid of them once and for all. That's about it for the plot. There are a few subplots that I didn't really go into, but I won't go into detail for them all. I did want to touch upon Grandpa Fred for a moment. Grandpa Fred, played by Robert Prosky, plays a night horror movie host, similar to Elvira, minus the boobs, of course. There's a movie clip that they show where Fred mistakenly calls it Attack of the Octopus People. The movie that he's showing is actually Octoman, and I'm not really sure why they used the wrong name. I only bring it up because there is a movie called Attack of the Octopus People now. Gremlins 2 also features a few cameos from Looney Tunes characters in the intro and the credits. These characters were used to set the tone and let people know that Gremlins 2 wouldn't be as scary as the first film. Speaking of, there's a scene that actually pokes fun at parents complaining about the violent or scary effects of the first film when gremlins take over a movie theater within Clamp Tower and swap out the film for something different. A mother drags her child out of the theater to complain to the worker. He calmly states that he only shows the movies, he doesn't make them. This is actually a parallel to what happened with Gremlins when that film was in theaters. One of my favorite scenes from the movie, though, occurs right after the mother drags her daughter out of the theater. The worker goes and requests that one of the patrons helps out. That person is none other than Hulk Hogan. Hulk cuts a quick promo and the movie resumes. It's just such a funny scene to have the Hulkster go after the Gremsters. There's another scene that stands out as funny and self-aware, and that's Leonard Maltin giving a review of Gremlins 1 during Gremlins 2 while Gremlins are mocking him from behind. It's funny to me because Leonard Maltin didn't actually like the first film, calling it icky and gross. So, if you haven't noticed by now, Gremlins 2 is very self-aware. There's even a scene making fun of the rules where some workers in Clamp Tower grill Billy over several inconsistencies. These scenes are hilarious to me, and I think they work very well. Here's one other interesting factoid about the film. Daniel Clamp, the owner of Clamp Enterprises, is actually a parody of Donald Trump and other billionaire moguls at the time. And yeah, that's probably pretty obvious for most people, to be honest. Screenwriter Charlie Haas is quoted with saying, "Trump was overbearing and obviously kind of goofy. He was an emblem of what was going on in the 80s and 90s with the greed and money crassness and the idea of the whole world being for sale. But he still seems sort of harmless." This is a direct parallel to Clamp's character in Gremlins 2. Clamp thinks that any and everything is for sale and will stop at nothing until he gets what he wants. Despite having the world in his hands, like his logo suggests, he comes off as down to earth. He's easy to talk to and is willing to do the right thing, especially if it helps his image. Okay, so maybe he's not the very best deep down, but he is charismatic. A lot of people compare Gremlins 1 and 2 and say that the first was clearly better. While I can see why people would say that, I still believe that both are good in their own ways. It's almost like comparing apples and oranges. Even though both films are similar, Gremlins 2 relies more on comedy rather than dark overtones. I think it's a solid sequel, and I highly recommend it.